All right, in this video, we're gonna make chicken and shrimp gumbo. I love making this dish because it allows me to take people on a journey. All right, so the first part of that journey is going to be knife skills. So we're gonna go through chopping all of our vegetables and all of the inclusions that will be in our finished meal. So it's always important to maintain the integrity of your knife and also to keep that knife sharp and able to cut through every single time. Giving you some, just a little bit of background knowledge on a gumbo, I'm gonna come in from a Creole perspective. So typically there's like a Creole and a Cajun. So Creole is typically more toward the water, right, of Louisiana. And so that uses more seafood and other proteins in that. And then with Cajun, it's more inland. So you'll have more sausage, you'll have more beef, more chicken and things like that. So that is typically the difference. Cajun can also be a little hotter as well. There is something called the Holy Trinity. And the Holy Trinity, it consists of your onion, your green bell pepper, and your celery. Okay? So that is the basis of the flavor that you're going to make. We're making something of a sauce or a broth, and their flavor is gonna come from there. So first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna dice an onion, okay? So when I teach classes, I usually want to drive home the importance of having a good grip on your knife. If you've got a weak grip, that knife and that blade's gonna go all over the place and you run the chances of cutting yourself. So you always wanna make sure you got a nice tight grip. This is considered the bolster. The bolster is where it's most heaviest in the knife, and this is kind of where you can this is where you kind of get your best grip, and this is where you want your thumb and your finger to be. Along the spine, this is the spine here, this is the blade. And obviously you wanna use the blade to cut, all right? So make sure you got a nice tight grip. I usually like to have my thumb right on top of that bolster, holding it nice and tight. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna cut into my onion. Okay? So everyone has a different way in which they cut an onion. I personally like to cut the top off first and then just kind of peel back everything. Okay? Also, when you're doing knife skills, I usually like to have a little dish for all of the things that I'm not gonna use. So like your throwaway dish. Okay. Also what I'm showing you is typically if you want to scrape into your throwaway dish or your bowl, it's always nice to use the back, the spine of the knife, not the blade, obviously, because you don't want to ruin that integrity that we talked about, right? All right, so the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna cut this part, right? So this is kind of the mold. This is kind of the part that's in the dirt. That's where all the microbes are and all those things that we don't want to have in our food. So we wanna cut that off, right? So we want it nice and clean that way. And then what this gives us is a nice kind of baseline to start, right? So we've got a circle here, so we can go right down the middle of that circle. So if we want to do a slice, so we can do a slice first just as a demonstration. So what I like to do is you almost want to form a really good grip that curls that first third of your knuckles on your fingers, okay? And then you just want to make sure that the side of that blade is running against those knuckles, and you're just gonna cut nice and even. Okay. Okay, so these are slices. And the important part of your slices is, again, you wanna make sure that they're nice and even, right? When your slices and your cuts, no matter if you're slicing or dicing, you wanna make sure that even cuts, the more even your cut, the more even your cooking will be, right? So if you think about it, if you've got like one big cut and one small cut, you go into a pot or a pan, the smaller cut's gonna cook faster, eventually burn because you're cooking the larger cut. So that was slicing. So now we're gonna go into dicing, and the dice cuts are what we're gonna put in our gumbo. All right, so if you notice, this is still intact. This is still intact, right? So the onion is still intact. I didn't cut all the way through, but that's gonna help us to come out with our dice next, right? So we're gonna take that same grip, and we're just gonna cut it down that way, okay? Okay, and if you get too close to your fingers, just turn it down, all right? And then you just wanna make turn it, and turn another way, okay? You don't wanna leave little to no flesh on that bowl, okay? So that's our dice. So if you look there, very small pieces. Most of them are very even, okay? And all of these, as we said, even cuts equals even cooking, okay? We go on to our bell pepper, okay? So there's a number of different ways to cut a bell pepper. You can go right down the middle. You can just kind of do a cut right down the middle, but you also have the seeds and the veins and things like that that you dig out. One easy way to just avoid all of that is to just cut right around the perimeter. Okay, all right, all done. Okay, so I've got a little bit of seed and vein left here, but not a big deal, right? So now no more fussing around with those seeds, okay? So now I've got these nice flat cuts, and again, we want to keep it in a dice. Okay, we want to keep all of our cuts in this gumbo in a dice. So I'm gonna go for a nice small to medium dice. All right. So I just made 4 pieces out of 1 slice, and then I'm just gonna go in and cut through. All right, do that to the next one. We're gonna come in nice and as even as possible. If you're uncomfortable with the knife, it's okay. You just make a nice rough chop. Just making sure every single time those cuts are even. Okay. We're just gonna finish out the second piece here. Nice even cuts. Okay. You don't have to be a top chef. That's what we always teach in the Cutting Board Academy. You don't have to, be this fancy chef to make a really good meal, right? Because if you got the knowledge and you got the know-how, you can make anything you want. Okay. We're gonna cut up some celery. So typically with your onion, your bell pepper, and your celery, you want to do these in ratios, right? So onion kind of gives you that more round, full flavor. You want to make at least half of that trinity your onion, because that's the base of flavor, right? And then that bell pepper and that celery complements that onion. So we're not gonna put a whole lot of celery in there. We're just gonna put about a stalk or two, okay? So I'm just gonna get rid of the ends here. If you've got like a whole fresh stalk of celery, you just peel it off of that full stalk, give it a good rinse. Just get rid of some of that dirt that's usually trapped in the bottom from where it grows. Give it a nice rinse, and if this piece is typically too big for me, I usually like to just kind of break it down into like thirds or quarters, depending on how big that stalk is. And then I make a nice dice from there as well. Okay, so I broke this up into 4s. Same thing that we did to the bell pepper. Just want to make a nice dice. Okay, nice and even. Okay, keeping those fingers curled. You want to make sure that those edges of your finger can feel that knife. You don't want to be cutting the tips of your finger. I can tell you in culinary school, I lost fractions of my finger. You want to make sure you protect those fingertips, all right? All right. And then lastly, I love garlic. I put garlic in everything. This is a beautiful red garlic here. So my recipes usually calls for 1 or 2 cloves. I usually double that just because I like garlic. Something about it that just rounds out the flavor. So There's a number of ways I can come back. Let's come back to this, right? So I had a full head here. So you could either kind of peel the paper off. You could take your hand, push down, and open them up that way. That's one way in which you can do it. Boom. Let's go back to what we know. Boom, came off just like that. All right. You can use your paring knife to do some of the cutting. I personally just like using my chef knife, but you choose what is right for you and what you feel comfortable with cutting with, right? So when we smash those garlic, we already kind of got halfway there with the cuts, okay? And so what we're doing here is just a nice rough mince, right? So we don't want it like super, super small. We want a, you know, a little bit of chunk, a little bit of, all right, nice and even, okay? And there we go, right? You might be wondering why garlic is so sticky when you're cutting it. That's because it has a lot of sugar content in it. And so that's what makes it sticky. That's what makes it get all over the place. If you don't want it to be super sticky when you're cutting it, you can add a little bit of like a large granular of salt, and that will help to keep it from sticking everywhere. Okay? So you can add that when you're chopping and cutting. All right. So that was knife skills. We've got our onions cut, we've got our garlic cut, we cut our bell pepper, we cut our celery. And so now it's time to go to the stove where we bring together all of those flavors in the form of a sauce and a base for our gumbo.